Everyone, welcome. I'm Marshall Snidely, President of Lancaster City Alliance, and I'm so happy to be able to bring this group back together. I'm with our partners from the YWCA. So Stacy, Dr. Murph, Adam, thank you all again. And before we turn it over to you to continue this important discussion that we started, I guess, 2 weeks ago, I did want to allow Kathleen to give a quick update on current retail activities going on. And Kathleen, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. I hope everyone realizes that this is Lancaster City Indie Retail Week, our second annual, and it runs through Friday. And it's an opportunity, especially at this time when our retail community has been so impacted by the COVID pandemic, for you to support our vibrant retail community. That means that you can either shop in person in the city of Lancaster, or there are many opportunities for you to shop online. You can go to our website, that's Lanc Indie Retail. Wyatt, help me, lankindieretail.com.
Right.
You can also support the Indie Retail Week by buying one of our super cool tote bags. Can everyone see it? And we have them available online. I'm going to drop the link for you to purchase them on the city website in chat. They are $15 and shipping is free. Use the code SHOPSMALL, and that will help to market us for this year and for next year as well. So shop small, shop often, shop local. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Kathleen. Obviously, this year is especially important with everything that our merchant community is going through. So if you can support this effort in any way, please do. So just a reminder, we are recording this. So for those who couldn't make it, they'll have access to this information and discussion today. So if you're not speaking, please keep yourselves on mute. And with that, I want to thank everyone again. Again, this is a follow-up to the meeting that we had 2 weeks ago, hosted by the YWCA, to talk about equity and inclusion with the merchant community and the shopping experience downtown, or throughout the city, actually. So for those of you that were with us at the last meeting, welcome back. For those of you who couldn't make the last meeting, welcome. We're so glad you can join us. And if you didn't have a chance to see the recording of the last meeting, I would suggest that everyone take a look at that, and we can send that link out as well when we send the link out to the minutes and the link out for this meeting. So with that, I'm eager to continue this conversation. I will turn it over to Stacy. Are you first, or Dr. Murph, Adam? I'll just turn over to the YW. Thank you.
Thank you, Marshall. Great to see everyone again. My name is Stacy Blake, and I'm so pleased to be joined today by two colleagues, Lucia, aka Dr. Murph, and Adam Hosey. Part of our approach at YWCA when we deliver training is to draw on the community experts that we have amongst us. So that's why you often see a number of us presenting together. So I'm going to pass right to Adam to kick us off.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to start by going over some norms. I wanted to highlight a few of these. One is that to value risk-taking and know that there are no stupid questions in this space. So throughout this entire presentation, please feel free to put any questions that you have about what we're talking about, any burning questions that you've had about racism or other forms of oppression, put that into the chat. My colleagues will be monitoring the chat, and then at the end of this, we will be going over those questions. This is very much kind of an Ask Me Anything, an AMA kind of style forum here. Pledge best intent and understand impact. So I think we all have really good intent But one thing that we need to be doing as a community is understanding the impact of our good intent, and sometimes those don't always align. The idea of taking space and making space, just be mindful that, you know, we want to respect everyone's time. We have a stop at 10 o'clock today. So as you are speaking, just be mindful of making sure you're bringing other people into that conversation as well. Again, please utilize the chat for any questions or comments, and just understand that, like, we're not going to solve racism in the Lancaster business community today. So expect and accept that kind of non-closure, and understand that there isn't really even an end point to ending oppression. It's kind of always a journey. And then, of course, you know, we're all also expecting and accepting discomfort. We're going to start off by talking about 3 things that came up in the post-survey questionnaire. So these were 3 of your questions that you had that we're going to start by talking with. The first one's unlearning oppression. The second one is handling specific conflict in the workplace. And then the third one is how to implement more diverse hiring practices. So without any hesitation, we're going to go ahead and get started. And again, please, any conversations that you have, any questions you have, please throw that into the chat. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is this idea of unlearning oppression. And to do that, we're going to open up this thing that we like to call the cycle of oppression and cycle of socialization. Does everyone see the new presentation with the big arrow on the screen? All right, good. So the first thing that we have to understand is that we are born into this society, and we are born free. We do not know racism, sexism, heterosexism inherently. We're not born with that. We are actually taught it some way through our schooling, through our lives. So we are actually born free. We don't have biases, stereotypes, or any habits. We don't have any blame. We don't have any guilt. And when we're born, we don't have any choices either. It was not our choice to be born. We're first socialized by the people that we love. They shape what we value in the world. It could be our guardians, it could be our parents, it could be other loved ones in the world. So throughout this little talk, I'm going to be using the stereotype that Black men are criminals. So that is a very vicious stereotype that lives within our community. So for me personally, when I was growing up, my parents told me not to go to certain parts of Philadelphia. And I didn't know exactly what that meant, but I loved my parents, and I understood, and I listened to them. And when they told me not to go to certain parts of the city, I said, all right, I'm not going to go to certain parts of the city. And then those values are shaped by the institutions that we are a part of. So thinking about the idea that Black men are dangerous, I remember my dad watching Cops every night from like 10 p.m. to midnight. So Cops is the longest running reality television show that has ever been on TV, and it disproportionately shows Black men as criminals. So when we are bombarded by these messages that are shaped by this white capitalist heteropatriarchy, all of our systems have been created by whiteness, by patriarchy, by heteronormative things. So like in television, we see Black men as criminals, and we interpret and we understand these messages to be true, especially for young children. Those messages are then enforced. They're enforced by the school. In the sense of our example, they're enforced by the criminal justice system. And we begin unconsciously understanding that certain groups of people are valued more than others. This, of course, results in what we showed last time as the pyramid of white supremacy. So we always think of racism as like the KKK, as lynching, as those things that are like the very overt, violent acts, but they are also supported by everything that is below it. So in this case of Black men being dangerous, it is supported, and we see that manifest itself by, you know, your eyes going to that Black man as they enter the store. following them around, double checking their receipt where you might not actually do that to a white customer. So these small instances of implicit bias, they manifest themselves, and they've been taught to us our entire lives. So at that point, you have two choices. You have the choice to be non-racist, because I believe everyone in this room is against racism, is non-racist. And then you have the choice to be actively anti-racist. So we have two things here. You know, to be non-racist is to do nothing. It's to not make waves. It's to maintain that status quo. It's the failure to challenge, and it's to remain neutral, because neutrality is, in a sense, just upholding the system. All right, so our system is based in white supremacy and patriarchy. As we stay silent, as we are neutral, we are complicit in upholding that system. Or we can be anti-racist. We can personally reflect. We can interrupt. We can educate ourselves. We can question the world and question how we were learning the world, and we can reframe. And of course, at the center of all of this is this idea of fear, confusion, insecurity, guilt, and shame. These are all the feelings that we've had as we see the world through a different lens. So we'll be sending this out, and this was a lot. Like, we spend about an hour and a half in our REI just on this segment. So that was definitely a crash course, but it was something just to think about as we continue. So decolonizing how you learn the world is really related to that idea of the cycle of socialization. We need to think about how we learn things and try to unlearn them. One way you can do that is to think about how you consume things through perhaps an anti-racist, a feminist, or a queer lens. So as I look at our polling results, I see that a lot of us, most of us, get our information from print journalism websites. Basically, all of these things that were in the poll, and let me stop our sharing so you can see the poll. All of those things, except for 24/7 news channels, there are places you can go that are actively queer, actively feminist, actively anti-racist. So you can be consuming the world and getting your news through an anti-racist lens. And we'll be sending those resources out as well. And like I said, all of those things except 24/7 news channels, you can find queer news, you can find anti-racist news, you can find feminist news. Lucia, yeah.
Let me unmute. The more we expose ourselves to ideas that are different than what we're used to, the more we are subconsciously addressing bias. So we're products of what we've been exposed to. The more we actively seek other perspectives, other people, other voices, the less we're going to hang on to old ways of thinking and racist ways of thinking.
Thanks, Lucia. Another part of unlearning oppression is, of course, doing your own personal work. I already mentioned this, thinking about the way you were raised, the way you were brought up, thinking about how you were brought up, and of course, to educate yourself. The YWCA runs a Racial Equity Institute. Our next one is coming up in 2 weeks. And our plan is to offer this to the public every month, essentially. And in the past, there has been a cost associated with that, which to me personally, coming into the community, I always thought was prohibitively high. So we are restructuring how we offer that, especially thinking about how much it costs to make it more accessible to the whole community. Because based on our mission, we want every person in Lancaster to have access to understanding oppression in our community. So be looking out for that. That is a really wonderful program. And the other thing that we have is called the YWCA Community Now Resources. We've been running a number of conversations with community members. And from that, we have developed basically what this is a fancy PowerPoint that will give you plenty of resources to continue learning. So actually, when you see this, every one of these things is a link to another slide in this presentation. So say you wanted to look for Lancaster specific resources, you could click on that link and it'll take you to a number of sources that are Lancaster specific. You can always go back to the table of contents and you can find other things. So when I was talking about decolonizing your news feed, we have a number of social media accounts that you can follow. Instagram and Twitter are the best places for that these days. Print journalism is catching up a little bit, but like Instagram is doing really great stuff. And they're also like sourcing everything as well, which is really good. So they're taking care to do that. And as you move through this, we spoke about this a little bit last meeting, but just remember that you are not going to solve racism and sexism within yourself in a day, in a week, maybe even 5 years. So when we think about these zones and these anti-racist zones, we know that we're going to be moving in and out of these zones depending on the day, depending on the situation. So part of that personal reflection is just to be very honest with ourselves about where we are. So right now, if you don't want to ask those hard questions, you might be in the fear zone here. But maybe about a different topic, maybe you're more comfortable with sexism, maybe you are better at educating your peers about how sexism harms your profession. So, you know, we want to try to minimize the guilt that we have. So the questions are always like, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? One of those first things is to understand like where you are already and to be able to move forward into those different growth zones. Our next piece is called handling conflict in the workplace. This is something that is, you know, we see it every day, whether it is employer to employer, employee to employee, or employee to customer, or if we see customers being racist to other customers in our businesses. A technique that we teach is called felt, found, feel, and it really relates to empathy and making sure that as you are interrupting a racist incident, that you let them know how you are feeling and especially how you have felt in the past. And this is especially true for white people interrupting racism among other white people. So knowing that you are a white person, if you were to tell another white person how you felt in the past, say, you know, I once held these biases and I once might have done the same thing that you have done, but then I found that, you know, that is a racist way of thinking, that is harmful to our community, and I feel that you could also do something different. I feel that you could be better for this other person you're acting towards. So the focus there is making sure that the person you're speaking to knows how you are feeling and how you can relate to them. And then this idea of hurting less and affirming more. Yeah, Lucia, go ahead.
I was going to add, when you do the felt, found, feel, you know, I used to, there was a day when I felt that way too. I found that that's not serving me or my business or the community. Now I feel differently. Now I feel that we need to include other people. When you take it like that, you're not accusing somebody of anything, and you're more likely to get through because you're not attacking them. So it's keeping it all in the eye. And we found that that's a very useful way to step in and get through somebody's mindset.
And that's really speaking to the idea of vulnerability, which is really important, especially thinking about leadership and your other employees. Being vulnerable and modeling that external conversation that you have with yourself is important to build a culture of inclusivity in your businesses. And it also speaks to hurting less and affirming more. So as we interrupt these and have these difficult conversations, we want to leave the other person in a place where they can actually learn. So we do not want to get into a situation where if you see a racist situation happening and you just say, you are a racist, you're a terrible person. That is not going to leave them in a place where they can actually learn and grow. So we want to be able to try to hurt them less, affirm their feelings, but then try to put them onto the right path, onto a path of understanding anti-racism and the actions that they do that can be harmful. The other thing I wanted to talk about is that, you know, you're not going to change everyone's minds, but as business leaders in the community, you can change policy. So Ibram X. Kendi, author of How to Be an Anti-Racist, he's really the one that has developed this in the past few years, understanding that, hey, if you can't change minds, change your policies, and make sure that when you interrupt racism or sexism, that, you know, you have that policy that has the teeth to back it up. And we'll talk about a little bit more policy in our next slide. So equitable hiring practices. You know, my wife works for a local marketing agency, and her company is going through the same situation. They're not sure how to hire and how to be more diverse in their hiring. One thing that you can do is to pressure, if you use temp agencies or headhunters, pressure them to make sure that they are being more diverse in the people they are serving, and leverage the power of community. So we have a number of businesses in this room right now. You can work together to make sure that you have a talent pool that is diverse and inclusive. So I totally could envision the Alliance bringing a number of companies together, creating some kind of talent pool, and anytime there is a kind of job opening, going to that talent pool and that everyone has access to, so you have those first few resumes that you can call. But of course, if your company is not a safe space for people of color, for women, for queer folks, those people are just going to leave. So making sure that you look at your own mission, that you look at your own core values and your culture, and do what you can to make that a space of inclusivity, because otherwise it's just tokenizing. So a few policy things, you know, the standard job application that most people have asks if you are a former felon. And we don't even like the term felon anymore. So we prefer incarcerated individuals because we know how the criminal justice system works. So, you know, prison is the punishment, right? So we don't want to continue to punish people once they do their time. So to have a question to ask if you are a previously incarcerated individual is automatically going to disqualify certain people. And we know how the criminal justice system works and how it disproportionately affects Black and brown men and women. So to just strike that question from your applications is something that you can do in the next hour. Along those lines, rethinking your requirements to apply to a job. Does that job really need a college degree, a master's degree? Does it really need English as your primary language? Because what people will do is they will see those job requirements and they won't even apply. So even when you have like college degree preferred, that is keeping people away. And again, as we understand the system of white supremacy, we know that white people have had more access to college education because of race and class privilege. So just thinking about those requirements would be really helpful. When it comes to building culture, thinking about specific questions that you can ask in interviews. So as you're hiring new people, bringing people that understand a more inclusive culture would be crucial to building your own culture that's going to be helpful for all kinds of people. So I have a few examples of questions there. So what does anti-racism mean to you? If someone can answer that, that would be like a really great person to hire to build the culture, right? Explain a time when you had a difficult conversation about X. So that would help someone be able to explain that they are able to have these difficult conversations. Understanding how your identity shaped who you are, and having a writing sample. So that writing sample could be like, a customer has accused you of being racist, how do you respond? Or a customer is said that they went into a store and they faced racism from one of your employees, how would you respond to that customer? So we just blew through all those things. But I wanted to spend a good, we have about an hour here to be able to, for you to ask questions and for my colleagues and me to answer them. So again, please make sure that you're putting any and all questions in the chat. Don't forget that this is a safe space, that there are no stupid questions, and to also honor the confidentiality of your colleagues that are in this room. So I'll throw it to my colleagues. What is a question that we want to start with, you think?
I actually saw someone starting to raise their hand, but I don't know her name. The screen name says Jay Gito. Yeah. Oh, you're on mute.
So I have a question you were speaking about how to handle racism, it seemed to me, between employees, between each other in the workplace. This was actually asked by one of our young Black employees yesterday. How does he handle, or what is the best way to handle when somebody comes into the store and is racist towards him, or makes a racist remark towards him, anything like that? How does he handle that without getting into a huge confrontation, like a physical confrontation?
Wow, I'm really sorry to hear that your employee is experiencing that in your business.
He's not experiencing that. He's just he had one time where somebody said something to him that was derogatory. They didn't realize they were being that way, but he wasn't sure how to handle it, and I wasn't in the shop at the time. So what is the best way for him to go about that, or for any of us to go about that?
Well, I think one of the things to understand here is privilege and safety. So his ability to respond and remain safe is going to be very different than yours.
Right.
Because of the relative power and identities that you are each presenting. One thing that occurs to me is, how is the business, and I don't even know your business, messaging to any customer who comes in, this is who we are. So for example, I have seen a couple, sometimes they're small, sometimes they're bigger, Black Lives Matter or other statements against racism in the windows of local businesses. Mm-hmm. When I see that, I feel very comfortable and safe to enter, because it's setting an expectation of what I might encounter. So that's one small thing that comes to mind. But I really am concerned that your employee could be in danger if they responded, and depending on who the person was. I mean, those are frankly the videos that we see over and over again.
Yeah, so I think also through policy, you could have some kind of policy that says, like, you cannot face disciplinary actions if you're a victim of racism in your store. So I think for people of color who have to worry about their jobs, and we've been conditioned to know that the customer is always right, and that phrase itself supports a white supremacist culture. So knowing that they're able to defend themselves and defend their identity without fear of losing their job would be huge for that employee.
We've gone over that. Well, we have conversations all the time in our shop, and we've gone over that. We have told them time and time again, it's not acceptable. What we told him yesterday was that if that comes down to it, you just say, I'm not going to have that conversation with you right now, but my employers do not support your views, and we're going to ask you to leave. Just point blank, ask them to leave. And then if for some reason it would ever get past that point, we do have the silent alarm buttons in the store, and we told him, you push it, you know, that's it, end of story.
Not end of story. End of story of the situation.
So
Was he in the store alone when this
No.
happened? Okay.
no,
That's
No.
a
So there
great
was somebody
example.
at a managerial level or supervisor level that was there?
there was. I don't know where that other person was. I didn't ask him that.
Okay.
So I don't know, and I don't know exactly what was said to him. He did not expand upon that. He just said he felt uncomfortable and he wondered what he should do in a situation like that.
So what I like about this conversation is I think we are identifying both internal and external ways to address this, right? Because it's not just him, it's not just the customer, it's also how your relationship with him, it's how you are presenting your business to the world, how you're setting an expectation, all of those things at the same time. This is a really good question. I'm glad you brought it.
Mm-hmm.
Can I say something real quick? So I have been seeing a lot of businesses outside of Lancaster, and I'm not sure because I'm not physically in Lancaster right now. And I noticed that when merchants are having a sign where, just like how Stacy said, that racism isn't tolerated here, or in that along that line, I feel that sets a tone to the individual that is about to walk into your establishment, because it already sets the tone and mindset of how you conduct business and what you tolerate. But I think just having that sign, that visual, because people are visual, I think that might help just for future. Unfortunately, it couldn't help, the incident that happened, and that was unfortunate, but we have to pivot in how to be positive and build awareness for our community. And I think, I don't know if Lancaster City has thought of the idea of providing signs that say that, or how we can come collectively to create those signs for the merchants. But I think that might be a great idea.
That would be a great idea.
Restaurants are experiencing this. Someone comes in and they don't want to wear a mask, and they're denied entrance because they don't want to wear a mask. And I'd say probably every restaurant in the city of Lancaster has experienced someone who becomes obnoxious because of it. But this escalated. A young Black man who handled himself so professionally, so beautifully, but it soon sort of turned into a horribly racist. She said, "You're not the only one with rights. You blow everything up, and then you burn down buildings and destroy property." It was horrible. He just went, "What?" And then he just repeated over and over, "You have to leave now. You have to leave now." But the most chilling part of this, it was all on video, of this video was the camera panned, and in the background, totally silent, head down, working, was one of his team members, a white woman who never said a word of support or did anything to stand by him during this. And I felt that so chilling. I think there should be some sort of, if there is a policy in a company that you will not tolerate racist behavior, I think that there should be some sort of team training, because I felt that employee's silence was more damning than the ignorance and racism of the guest. I mean, I just was left shaken when I saw that.
I was at a Costco when somebody was in the store, took his mask off and started yelling at an employee who was a person of color. The other teammates surrounded him and helped him find the door. Nobody touched him, but it was like, you are not welcome here. You may leave now. And that culture of taking care of each other is critical. Mm-hmm. What that says is this is an anti-racist place. We respect each other, as evidenced by the fact that we back each other up and protect each other. It's really important to start now before you have some of those events happen in your place of business.
Yeah, there was no protection for Malik. He was on his own.
So those two stories are the two columns on the slide Adam showed earlier about being anti-racist, which would be the example that Lucia, Dr. Murph just gave, where people actively did something, and being non-racist, which is the example Kathleen gave, where the co-worker did nothing, did not make waves. And so those two stories are a perfect example of this slide.
It was sad, but again, I have to commend Malik. He was so professional, and to just keep repeating, you have to leave now, even though the remarks were so cutting and must have been so hurtful.
Did they leave? Did they leave?
I imagine. I can't imagine she's still up there.
Yeah, so a couple things with that white woman, we call that spending your privilege, knowing that as a white person, you can spend that privilege to support your Black and brown allies. For me as a man, I know I can spend my male privilege to support women. So that's what she should have done in that instance. And the other thing is thinking about a culture of inclusivity and support. We know that our BIPOC employees will face racism. That's just a fact. But we need to be proactive about responding to that. So I would hope that Malik has people to go to in the organization to be able to voice their feelings and emotions. I hope someone is checking in on Malik in a way that's like loving and supportive.
Oh, he was getting a lot of love on this. And he's very well known in the community. So there's a great deal of outrage too, but a lot of love.
We use the phrase BIPOC. Adam, do you want to explain what that means? Because we use it a lot.
BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color. It's an acknowledgement of kind of the original sins of our country that we did towards Black people and Indigenous peoples. It's often confused with bisexual people of color. That's not what it means. So the bi actually means Black and Indigenous.
It's also the order in which people's histories disappear from the history books. First, the Black history disappears, then the Indigenous history disappears, and then people of color. So that's also why it's in that order. It's intentional.
I wanted to go back to the slide you shared, Adam, that had some sample interview questions on it. And people might not know, but at YWCA, we have just under 100 employees. So for various reasons, there is pretty much constant hiring happening for various positions. And we've started using a question for all positions, which actually is asking people to explain the concept of racism. And it has been, and actually I was asked that when I interviewed for the job that I have there. And when I was asked it, it was the first time I've ever been asked that in an interview. But again, it really signaled to me that this board is serious about our mission, because our mission is to eliminate racism and empower women. When I have asked this question in interviews I've been conducting, it's just so telling right away if a person has done any reflection or any scan of our website to invest in some personal learning on this topic versus someone who is very skilled and knowledgeable, or someone who they certainly never dreamed they would be having this conversation. And for us, obviously, relative to our mission, it's extremely important. But as you think about building culture at your business, I'm really encouraging you, don't be afraid to ask these questions.
I have a question. I agree 100% with the questioning, but I talked to Marshall about a week or two ago. To get to the point of questioning, it's a lot of education that it doesn't matter who you are, you can get a job with us. So it comes to education of everybody that is available for employment. Come in and see us, because we will interview you as well, and you have as good a chance to get a job as everybody else. How do you increase that education to allow everybody to know they have the opportunity as well, whoever that person is?
Education for whom? I'm just not sure what you mean by that.
Like we hired an Afro-American at our shop when we first started, and we've had multiple talks with our employees about everything that's going on. And one of his points was, if he wasn't there with his friends and it just happened that he got the job with us, he would never have thought about even coming into our shop, that he had a chance to get a job over anybody else.
So that's kind of why I suggested leveraging the power of community and what you have in this space and with the Alliance. So thinking of my own teaching experience, I'm a teacher in the Delaware County, Philadelphia area. There's something what's called a Consortium for Equity and Hiring. And it's a list of school districts that have pledged to make sure that they are being more inclusive in their hiring. And every year they have, they call it an Educators of Color Career Fair. So for a teacher of color, I know I can go to that place and I can look at the districts that are pledging to make their teachers more diverse. So that's why I said, like, leveraging the power of the people that are in Lancaster.
Okay, great, thank you.
Other questions you might have for us, either just go ahead and unmute or put it in the chat. I did want to, someone had posted a question earlier. The question was, many organizations are looking to do the right thing, but are not sure where to start. Can you advise where to begin? And Adam gave us some great business-specific ideas about how to start, thinking about the culture of your business, thinking about your hiring practice, etc. And as business leaders, it's also, of course, the personal at the same time. And for lots of people, there's really not much separation between leading their business and living their life. And I find myself in my personal practice, you know, I see an opportunity every day to stand up on these issues. And so sometimes when a person's, you know, is unsure what to do, it's almost difficult for me to hear that, because I feel like I would probably not even be able to do my job if I attended to all the things that I see every day that are racist that I want to point out or confront or discuss with someone. And I'll share just a small, but again, I do believe every act matters. I stopped at a garage sale the other day and, you know, perused the people's stuff, and it wasn't really my kind of stuff, which is fine. And on my way out, there was a cookbook that said Dixie recipes. So I picked it up, and on the front is an image of a Black woman, sort of the former Aunt Jemima style serving. And as soon as you open the book, there were three white women in hoop skirts in front of what appeared to be a plantation porch or something. So I put the book down and I took 2 steps off the driveway and I turned around, got the book, went up to the lady having the sale and said, you know, I do respect that this is your personal sale in your personal garage, but I need to tell you that this is racist imagery that is very upsetting to see. And she said right away, I'm not a racist. And I said, what I'm pointing out here is the racist imagery that is harmful and perpetrates stereotypes about Black women and white women from this book. And she said, I've had the book a long time. I said, I'm sure you have. And I need to tell you today, because I have to be true to myself, that this is what I see. And while she was flustered and upset, or more than upset, there was another lady there. And she was startled, but much more with an open ear. And I share that story because I don't know any impact that was really positive on the lady selling the book, but the other lady, I think, might have seen or learned something in a different way. And that's why for me, it's so difficult to miss the opportunity to point something out or stand up or say something, because, you know, sometimes the imagery is that, you know, each time we're planting a seed, and it might be the first time the seed got dropped, or it might be the 3rd time it got watered. And then someone, you know, is able to see and grow and learn something more. And really this idea of affirming more and harming less, there is something to do every day in the city of Lancaster. There's a lot to do outside the city of Lancaster on these issues, but there's a lot to do inside the city of Lancaster as well.
One of the things that I talk when I work with leaders, we talk a lot about mindset and how your brain will show you exactly what you're looking for. So once you start getting used to this and you start thinking about this, reflecting on what your assumptions are about a situation, in the leadership development work that I do, we spend a lot of time unpacking assumptions. And people are always a little bit surprised at what the underlying assumptions are to some of the decisions that they make. So don't be afraid to do that, to explore what your going in assumptions are, because what you assume will block other things out that maybe you maybe should notice. So if you can take a class, if you can go to Racial Justice Institute, if you can have these conversations with your employees, if you can ask a person that doesn't look like you, or doesn't have the same lifestyle as you, don't turn to them for education, turn to them for conversation and listen, really listen. By opening your mind, you will start seeing, like Stacy said, you will see it everywhere.
Thank you for sharing that story, because that's where I am right now when I see those small things. Well, they might be small to me, but not small to others. I struggle with how to respond. And it really bothers me that up to this point in my life, I haven't really done what you just did. And, but that's where, like, so like social media is an example of this. Like I think we all see bad behavior on social media, and it's like people that you like, and you're going, oh no, did they just post that? Do they know that that's like basically racist? I mean, it might not be overt, but and then I'm like, how do I respond? And you could write a novel. You could spend an hour trying to post something that's polite but pointed and explain, and I'm just like, I don't know that I have time, but I want to help. And so that's where I am right now, struggling. Like I got that crazy racist aunt that like I don't want to upset the apple cart, but at the same time I'm like, gosh darn it, Ann, you need to speak up, so help.
One of the tools that we learned in racial on our EI was the ouch. Adam, you remember this. And when you see something or hear something, sometimes just saying, wow, ouch, did that just come out of your mouth? Really? And
Okay.
and it's not saying, you stupid racist. It's saying, wow, that really hurt. Ouch. And if they're interested in knowing more, they will pursue it. But at the very least, you've stopped them in their tracks. Just a thought.
I think actively practicing those responses is very helpful too. So we have, I have people in my life that we call it Femtouring when we teach this in our Racial Equity Institute. Femtour is like the female version of mentor, but we're taking the men out of it. So, if I have a situation, I will go to the people I trust and say, hey, can we Femtour this? And we will role play the situation. And we will look at it through different, viewpoints, different ways to approach it. And we will like literally practice it out loud. So when I see hate speech on the internet, I always think in my head, if that person said that to me in person, how would I respond? So, Lucia's talked about like, once you see it in a certain way, it just it consumes you and you see everything. It's like taking that red pill in the Matrix. So that intentional practice, I think, is really important.
Thank you. Yeah, I've noticed when I'm in person with something and I see something, I'm usually so struck dumb for a while. Like I gotta pick my jaw up off the floor. Like, did they just say that? And then it's like the moment's passed, and so then I don't know what to do. I'm like, oh, I want to say something, but so yeah, okay. This is just, hopefully everyone else experiences that too, and I'm not the only one that like goes, oh. So, okay. But yeah, I want to do better. And so thank you.
That's such a great example, Anne, because there's certainly, I still lose sleep over opportunities I missed. And I'm like, darn it, I could have, and then the moment passed. But what Adam just said, which I also do, is then find a trusted anti-racist friend to go through that and practice. So next time I'm ready and I'm not going to be caught the second time. I'm going to be ready to say something. And anytime you want to call and practice, call me up. I'm ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, I want to do better.
But the other thing, especially for white folks, and this goes to something Adam mentioned earlier, when you learn more, you can get paralyzed. I feel so bad about all of this. I feel embarrassed. How did I not know this? How am I part of this? This is horrible. But we don't have time to spend being paralyzed and full of shame. So I like to say, we're just going to give grace and move forward. Continue to learn and start to show up. And some of the showing up might be awkward and imperfect, and that's okay, because it's better than not showing up at all.
I have a quick question. So like, when you're trying to educate the community, or even just having an information session, do you ever think that some of the verbiage that is used automatically separates individuals from other individuals? So for example, when we use the word brown, when we use the word white, do you ever feel that that sets the tone within seconds before even engaging?
Yes, and that's a conversation that we have internally at the YW too. Should we use the term oppression? Should we use the terms white supremacy? So I know personally in my own work, I do believe in naming things what they are. So this is the reality of our society, that our society systemically divides people by race, and that there are logical and predictable consequences because of that. I think you raise a very valid point that if we continue speaking in those terms, then in a sense we are perpetuating that cycle as well. But to be colorblind is a way that we are holding up this system of white supremacy. So, you know, I guess it's important for the presenter to make it very clear that we'd love to have a colorblind world, but that's just not the reality that we're living in.
Mm-hmm.
I hope did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess because when I listen to sometimes like conversations as far as the whole thing at the end of the day is not having knowledge. And when there's a lack of knowledge, that leads into misconceptions. So I guess I just think, I mean, I'm not an educator by any means, but I know that just personally, when I hear the word Oriental, when I hear the word brown, when I hear the word white to start a conversation, I feel that instantly it kind of like sets you back a little bit on how you're going to proceed with that conversation, or how you're going to proceed to understand the other side of thinking. So I guess like I'm just trying to say, like, is there a way to be more mindful on how we move forward to educate our community about racism, about separation? You know, I'm just thinking out loud. Sorry.
I'm going to share a story. I am Latina. My maiden name is Lucia del Carmen Pisuto Chavez. It all gets lopped off with marriage. I had a very overtly racist confrontation with somebody in a school district in Lancaster, who was furious because I'm white passing. I was told that I culturally raped her because I wasn't the right color. And you kind of just go, wow. At the time, I won't lie, my mouth was, I'm sure, I look like a codfish with my mouth wide open going, what? I am brown in a white coating. So I have both. I have to do the work of white people, and I have to do the work of brown people. So being both, I used to think, and I would hear it, that I was neither brown, nor was I white. But I've found that I'm both and. And so the more I talk to people and the more I say, look, I get it. There were times when I didn't step up because I leveraged my white privilege and didn't step into the middle of name calling or whatever and let people ramble, taking mental notes, because that's white privilege, the white privilege side of me. But I'm both. So you're welcome to give me a call if you want. Have conversations with people that don't fit into nice, neat categories. You're not culturally raping somebody if you think they're one thing and they're not another, or they're actually something different than the stereotype that you gave. It was a very terrible, horrible conversation, and it was very public. So I offer you the option to think that people sometimes aren't what you think they are, and to leave the door open for somebody who has a different understanding than what the stereotypical look would be.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
don't know if that helps or not.
No, it definitely helps. I mean, my husband's Caucasian. So like I know both worlds. I was born here in the States. I wasn't born in my parents' country. So like I totally get it, but what I'm just saying is that I think that we need to be as a whole mindful on the words that we use when we're speaking, as far as speaking about race, as far as addressing an individual. And yeah, I understand that we have to be transparent. I'm probably the most transparent person ever, you know, but like at the same sense, we don't know the thinking process of another individual that we're speaking to and how they are going to absorb that information or that conversation. So that leads to being mindful as like to people's feelings, because we don't know, you know. So yeah, that's I don't know, just me personally, I just kind of like step back a little bit of the verbiage, that's all.
Well, and admittedly, when we say brown, that's shorthand for, you know, a bulk of the world, right? And in Lancaster, it is actually surprising to me sometimes how often I see people who are active in the community refer to part of the community as Spanish or Spanish speaking, when the community is Cuban and Puerto Rican and Dominican. And so another way to approach this is to ask a person how they want to be identified. And so as I started, you know, brown is a shorthand to illustrate big themes of systemic oppression. But within this community, there's ample opportunity to be much more specific about who we're talking about.
Yeah, I just think that like if we're going to be transparent and we're showing transparency, then we need to be specific in conversations. We need to be specific on what we're trying to build as far as awareness. And that leads to educating our community. And that you know, I just think that it boils down to lack of knowledge. That's what it boils down to.
And when we train, we try to have a diverse facilitation panel as well. Because I know hearing a white person say black and brown is very different than the feelings I have, and the feelings that you have, Christina, might be very different than when a person of color says it. So we try to have a diverse facilitation staff, and we also do a needs assessment ahead of time, so we know how people like to be identified before we enter a training space. And I think that is helpful as well.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing and listening.
So Marcy asked, so many people and businesses that aren't aware that there's an issue, how to bring that awareness. I hope the panel that we put together, the very small panel, was helpful to listen to. I think listening to the experiences of our customers along racism, sexism, heterosexism, ableism lines is very helpful and a way to get people aware of issues in our community.
Adam, to that point, I mean, the panel at the last meeting I found very enlightening, you know, even for me, and the fact that, you know, people of color, you know, don't usually see people that look like, you know, us when we walk into the store in downtown, you know, especially, I found, you know, very, very interesting. I mean, again, very enlightening. And the fact that there is still sort of this almost intimidation factor of you know, of downtown, you know, with sort of with the broader community to many. So we're going back to the question that Judy had about, you know, how do businesses go about employing or offering opportunities to people of color, and how do we, and I don't know that there's an answer to this now, but how do you balance and deal with, you know, the fact that you can put ads in the paper, you know, saying that stores are are hiring and welcoming, but for the population who thinks that downtown isn't for them, they don't think, they're almost too intimidated to even apply. So where does that conversation start with just, the sign in the window? Because, you have the sign in the window and you walk into the shop and you still, okay, here's the sign, but there's no one in there that looks like me. Is the sign just a marketing tool, or is it a intentional step to sort of reach the next level? So, I mean, again, I don't know what the answer, what the answer is, but is there a way to start to approach making the shopping or customer experience in the city, or actually county in general, more welcoming, therefore creating more opportunity to diversify staff, or people feel more inclined to apply for a position because they think they actually have a chance. Does that make sense?
Marshall, I see it as all of the steps, and I would welcome a conversation about, is there something we could do together around a intentional hiring opportunity? Is there something to be done about signage in windows? Is there something to be done? I also see the question about hosting classes on racism in the business place. Everything is possible. It's COVID time. Everything is possible. And there's no better time to do this than right now. Just right now.
I feel like when I come on these Zoom meetings, there's not a lot of representation from the business community, like people that actually are just business owners. Like half of this Zoom meeting is people that are here to speak to us. So it's relatively few businesses that are represented here. However, when I go to the Alliance meetings, seems to be a large percentage of businesses that are represented there for the most part. A lot of times it's standing room only. That's why I'm thinking maybe that might be a good place to start, having presentations on racism, handing out signs that people can put in their windows, that racism is not tolerated here. Obviously, we can't do that now because we're not allowed to meet due to COVID, but I think it might be something, if you're open to it, Marshall, that we could look at in the future.
Oh, I think absolutely. And in the past, we've had the YW come in and to have that conversation. I think as soon as, short answer is yes, absolutely.
Okay. Because I see what Marcy's trying to say. How do we start to bring awareness where there is none? And I appreciate Adam's answer, but I don't think it. I don't think it tells us like I'm kind of like Ann was. I want to do something. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to bring that awareness to other businesses. So I'm kind of looking for guidance from everyone else as to what to do, how to do it, how to start it. Where do we move on from here?
Yeah, I also think in this era of Zoom, unfortunately, I think some folks may be a little zoomed out. The first meeting that we had here, we had over 40 participants, and the majority were merchants very involved in for the follow-up, we didn't get quite the same response. But also this time, more businesses are open, more, it's just like some other challenges out there. So I think that's something else that we need to, to think about. We have heard from some that the amount of webinars and other Zoom meetings that are offered out there can become overwhelming. So I just think we sort of need to be, I don't know if careful is the right word, but I do think we should be strategic, because it is going to be a while before we're going to have meetings with 50 people in the same room again. I think, unfortunately. So these conversations can't wait until then. So I just think we have to be strategic how we do this and get the most people at the table that we can while we're waiting to get back to whatever the new normal is going to be.
And speaking to your colleagues too is really important. So Marcy had a follow-up question about, like, what about the businesses that aren't here? And you're right, Marcy, those are the hardest people and businesses to reach. Again, I'll say it again, leveraging the power of community. If you have 20 people telling a person that, hey, maybe you should check this out, that's going to be a lot more powerful than having one or two.
Yeah, I will also say to that to that note, Adam, and this is something that we've said a lot as the Alliance, that we rely on, and this puts pressure on those that are on the Zoom now, but peer-to-peer sort of discussions, I think, probably go further than hearing from Lancaster City Alliance. So if you go to your neighbor, and say you were just at this meeting, this is what I learned, and I think that puts more pressure on on the other businesses who aren't here, if they hear directly, I don't know, via social media or personal contacts, that the stance that their neighboring businesses are taking, and the steps that they're taking to sort of eradicate racism.
There are probably fewer things more powerful than the lived example. So being a role model, talking about it, incredibly powerful, because everybody on this call is pretty cool. So they see somebody cool doing it, they're going to be more likely to follow along as well. Lived examples.
I have a question. This has nothing to do with the subject, I'm sorry, but are you able to pick up the indie bag somewhere specifically instead of buying it online? I'm so sorry. I wanted to ask that before I forgot.
Christina, they are available for direct sales at Swedish Candy at 356 North Queen Street.
Perfect, thank you.
Are there posters available to pick up anywhere for that as well?
You didn't get your poster?
We didn't. Oh, no, wait, we did. I'm sorry. I just wanted additional ones.
Oh, I don't know if we have any left. Wyatt, can you speak to that?
All out unless they print more.
That's all right. I can copy it.
Okay, thank you.
Marcy shared an experience in the chat that I think is pretty significant for us to kind of hold and think about. I'm not sure if the Central Market is part of the Alliance or anything like that. But, that's one of those situations where policy can drive what happens in the market. So we know the incident of the gun person a few weeks ago. And then I believe the market is now a gun-free space because of public pressure. So, this would be another situation where pressure from the community would be significant. And, Lucia mentioned the power of the personal experience, and few things are more powerful than that. One of those things is the dollar bill. So I know on my end, on the consumer end, activists are doing our best to make sure we value where we put our money. So, we're trying to do our part, and we're very looking forward to continuing to working with business owners as you all continue to do your part. So, Central Market, it's such a bastion of the Lancaster community and so important to the community. That kind of makes me upset hearing that story. So, just one more thing to put on the list. We'll see about that. Stacy, I'll throw it over to you. I think maybe a few closing words. I'm very thankful for everyone in this space.
Thank you all so much for coming today. Stacy?
Yeah, thanks everyone. It has been so great to engage in these conversations. I really want to appreciate Marshall for inviting us and Anne for helping make it work, and especially Adam and Lucia, my trusted colleagues here, who always stand up and do the right thing and share their wisdom and education and knowledge on these topics. So coming up at YWCA, more learning opportunities. We just yesterday were finalizing the dates and times of the next Racial Equity Institute. So when we get that locked down, I'll make sure Anne has it and she can circulate it with you all. Of course, it will be on our website and our Facebook. Also, the third Thursday, August 16, 19, something like that, is our third Thursday is always book club night. And this month, our reading is the book Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. He is a legendary defense attorney and creator of the Equal Justice Institute and Museum in Montgomery, Alabama. So we'll be reading that book, and we'll be talking to our newest locally owned bookstore to see how we connect going forward, to always alert them to what the book is so everyone can support them and get their book there. Also, we'll be scheduling our final Community Now conversation of the summer, and this one will be very specific to the city. So these have been conversations with local voices, local individuals, not voices, individuals who maybe are not always the first person invited to the conversation, but who have a point of view that's critical for the moment that we're in and the movement for Black Lives Matter and what that means in this city. So the next one will be very specific to the city. And finally, there is a job position posted at YWCA right now for the director of our new Center for Racial and Gender Equity. And this is an initiative at YW to bring all of our work together under one umbrella, really with an intense focus on moving our mission forward, both internally and externally. And part of delivering training every month to the community is within the Center for Racial and Gender Equity. So it's been wonderful to meet with you all, and anyone who wants to continue these conversations on the side, please reach out. You can find me easily through the website. And thanks again to the Alliance.
Great. Stacy, Dr. Adam, thank you all very much. And everyone, thank you for joining us. We will send out a link to a video for this, so please share it with your peers and family. And we will be in touch soon. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.